So today the topic is Maaser, separating 10% and charity in general. We know that Jewish people are generous, kind, compassionate, and this trait comes from our forefathers. We know that Abraham separated Maaser. We know that Yitzhak separated Maaser, and we know that Yaakov separated Maaser. The Torah actually describes each one that by Abraham it says that after he won the war against the four kings, as gratitude to Hashem, he separated 10% and he gave it to the priest of Jerusalem, who was Melech Shalem, who was Shem at that time. He gave him 10% of the spoils of war. And Yitzhak, it says that in the Midrash that he separated Maaser, and we know this because Yitzhak used to measure how much his land produced. And we have a rule that you're not supposed to count and calculate the money and the livestock and the harvest that you get, because the blessing is only found in things that are hidden from the eye. And therefore, if possible, don't count how much you have. This way you're allowing Hashem to give you more than you have. But if you know already how much you have, then it's not going to help. If Hashem gives you another $100 bill in your pocket, it's going to be a miracle. And Hashem doesn't want to do miracles. So you are putting a limitation on your own finances by keeping careful track of it.
What if you have your own store or business? Are you not supposed to count how much?
So you're only supposed to count for a purpose, not only just so that I can enjoy, like the Donald Duck who loved to count his money just for the sake of enjoying the sound of it. But if you have a purpose, and what is the purpose? One of the reasons you can count is just to make sure did you make money or lose money, just to make sure do I have enough money to pay my workers. But why did Yitzhak Avinu count his harvest? So the reason why he did it was because he needed to know how much to separate as Maaser, how much to give to charity. And since, as we're going to learn, Maaser has to be precise, 10%, you need to count how much you make in order to give charity. So if you're planning to separate 10%, then you're allowed to count your money. But if you're not planning to, then better not count.
Well, if you have to pay bills and all that stuff.
Of course, in order to pay bills or your workers or your monthly expenses, that's a valid reason to count. So we know Abraham separated Maaser, we know Yitzhak separated Maaser, and we know that Yaakov, before he came to Lavan, after he ran away from Esav, he made a vow to Hashem. He said, Hashem, if you protect me and if you bring me back in peace, I will make you my God, I will serve you, and whatever you give me, I will separate 10%. Yaakov. So even before the Torah was given, Jewish people, our forefathers already were separating Maaser, 10%, and giving it to charity. And after the Torah was given, separating Maaser became an obligation for farmers. If you harvest your field, you have to separate first terumah, you have to separate about 2%, and you have to give it to Kohanim for their work in the temple, and then you have to separate 10% from the remainder and give it to the Leviim, the Levites, for their participation in a temple work and educating the Jewish people. And then some years, year 3 and year 6 of the 7-year cycle, you have to separate an additional 10% and give it to poor people. And in years 1, 2, and 4, 5, you separate the second 10%, but you eat it yourself in Yerushalayim. So you take all the fruits and grain that you separated 10% from, you bring it to Yerushalayim and you eat it there with your family and friends. Yes.
Is that in addition to, they had a thing where they couldn't pick up the last, like if something fell, you couldn't pick it up, or you had to
Yes,
wait
this
for
is
it
in
to heal?
addition to other gifts to the poor. For example, when a farmer cuts the wheat and if some stalks fall out from his hand on the ground, he cannot pick it up. This is where the expression in Russian "что упало, то пропало" came from, that if a stalk or two stalks fall from your hand at the time of harvest, you cannot pick it up anymore. It goes to the poor. If 3 or more stalks fall, then you can still pick it up. That's number one. And then also you have to separate. You have to leave behind corners of your field, or at least one corner of your field you cannot harvest. You have to leave it for the poor, or you can harvest the center of the field, but the corners leave for the poor. That's the second one. And the third one is, if after you made bundles of wheat stalks and then you load them onto your carriage or your truck, if you forget a bundle in the field, you cannot come back. If it's a normal size bundle, not a large collection of bundles, but if you leave one individual bundle in the field, you have to leave it for the poor. In addition to additional blessing for somebody who separates 10%. If the husband is not on the same page, then the wife can still fulfill the mitzvah of charity, because, like you said, charity is a small amount, and a small amount a wife is allowed to give without asking the husband, because we assume a person is not going to mind if his wife gives $1, $5 to charity.
What if he does mind? I'm just asking.
If he does mind, then it goes like this. If the amount that she earns is less than what he provides for her, then really everything she earns goes to the family account, and it's not really her money, because it's like an exchange. He's giving her much more than she's giving him. However, if she is earning more than he's providing her, then she has the right to say, you don't have to support me. Whatever part that you're supporting me, I'll take from my own money, and this way I'm going to be independent, and I will separate Maaser from my full income as I wish.
So then they would basically divide the whole rent and electricity and the food and yada yada yada?
That's their decision. But assuming that she earns much more than he provides for him, then she's not under obligation to give the money to him, and therefore she can separate the maaser. There's a separate question whether it's healthy for marriage to do that, and maybe even if she does earn more, maybe she should still go the long route, a safer route, to give the money to the family account, and just work slowly in encouraging him to start giving charity. Now, what income counts towards maaser calculation? Of course, your regular paycheck, you have to count towards your maaser. However, only what you actually get on your hands, not the taxes.
Not the taxes, right?
No, and as well as whatever else you need to subtract in order to keep that job, which means any business expense is not considered income, because it's an expense to get the money. So the final income is whatever you get minus the expenses, right? That's how business works. And therefore, after you get your paycheck, if you have a business, then it's easy. Everything you spend is a business expense. But let's say you work for somebody and you get a paycheck, then whatever you spend in order to have that job is considered a business expense. So for example, if not for that job, I wouldn't buy a Metro card, the monthly one. But because of that job, now I have to buy a Metro card. So that money is a business expense. However, even if I didn't have that job, I would still buy the Metro card anyway, because I go to my friends, I go to classes, I go to the library, whatever it is, I still need it. So then it's not a business expense. Gas for car. If I'm driving to the job, then it's a business expense. Other trips are not business expense, or payment for the car, whether it's a lease or you're buying the car. If I have this car only because my job requires it, then it's a business expense. But if even without my job, I would still buy it for my family or for myself, then it's not a business expense. Or for example, if the only reason I bought this particular car, more expensive car, is because of my business, and if not, I would buy a cheaper car. For example, if I could happily drive a $200 leased car, but because of my job I needed a $400 leased car, so those extra $200 is a business expense.
a good 80% of what I use the car for is driving to work.
Right. So then the 80% of the gas is going to be
Calculate that.
is but only the gas, because if you would have that particular car anyway,
So I can't take anything else.
you couldn't, unless you say the mileage, because it's also wear and tear. That extra 80% of wear and tear on the car is because of the business that you can subtract.
Yeah, so like, let's say gas prices go up and like traffic is longer, like how are you gonna ever be so precise?
Yeah, you can.
Well,
One day it might
Yes.
cost
Now
more
it's
gas.
now it's not so hard because you pay everything with credit card. At the end of the month, you see they even divided how much you spend for restaurants and gas,
But then if I'm buying
And-
gas and then I'm not, but then I do drive.
and then you
overseas.
estimate the percentage. If you can calculate how many miles, how efficient your car is, and you can give exact toll. If you're going to the job and you're paying toll, that's business expense. If you're paying toll to go to a restaurant, it's not a business expense. Another example is if a woman needs a babysitter because she's going out to work, that's a business expense. However, if a woman is getting a babysitter just because she needs a break from her kid, that's not a business expense. Yes, so coming to Emet is also not a business expense. It's you can say it's a mitzvah expense. So if a person cannot afford, whether it is to pay for a course, a class, to buy a book, or babysitting because you need to go to a class, if you cannot afford it with your regular money, then you can use your Maaser money.
So, you know how if you work for, let's say, a company, the paycheck, they take out also, let's say, the medical, dental, all of that stuff. Even if you weren't working, you would probably buy some sort of insurance? Or can I, because if you say you should take 10% of your paycheck, what I receive is not necessarily what I make after taxes, right? So,
Yes, so you can subtract it because you could, if you didn't work, there are free or cheap insurances. So you could have gotten that, and because you're working now, you have to pay more. And another example is, let's say you need to buy a business suit or dress to meet clients. You wouldn't buy it otherwise. So that is considered a business expense. However, let's say you would buy a dress or a suit anyway, and just because you need it for work, you're gonna pay more. You're gonna buy a more fancy one. So that extra $100 or $200 that you pay on top of your regular dress can be subtracted from your income. And the same with going to a restaurant. If you're going to a restaurant with a business client, and you wouldn't go otherwise, you would bring lunch from home, so the restaurant expense is a business expense and you can subtract it. However, if you would go to a restaurant anyway, then you cannot subtract it. Now, let me ask you some examples. What about stocks? You invested in stocks and now they went up. Do you have to separate Maaser?
Yeah, but that depends if you take it out, right? Because if you don't take it out, you're not going to.
Yeah, very good. So you only have to separate Maaser for stocks if you sell them and you take out the money, then that's your income. As long as they're in there, even though the value grows, but it's not your income yet. Hopefully it will grow forever, but until you take it out, it's not guaranteed. It might go down. In fact, when I was in college, one of my friends, he once called us all for dinner because he said, just in one day his stocks went up $400. So he took us all for dinner, and the next day it went down. So therefore, it's not considered income until you sell it.
I asked a question similar to that. In September, I give like a big amount of like nicer money, and like in that like span of time, like I got into two car accidents. I've never gotten into two accidents. So like, how does like the two like correlate together, or are they don't? It might
Y-
not.
Yes,
But
that,
in that, I guess the DACA mitzvah nowadays.
Yeah, could have been worse.
that's a good idea. That people say we know the idea that if a person separates maaser diligently, he is guaranteed to be wealthy. So people ask, until I was giving tzedakah, I was wealthy. Once I started, accidents started happening, things started happening. Why? Or some say, I was always not doing well, and I hoped that once I start separating maaser, things will get better, and they didn't. Where is the guarantee? So there are many answers. One answer is that you yourself gave, that especially in September, there could have been something worse, and by giving tzedakah, it was downgraded to just an accident. Or it could be, some people say, oh, I started separating maaser and I didn't become rich, so this segula doesn't work. So then we say, do you know that there are some things that if you do them, it takes away parnasa. So maybe you did some of those and it canceled out. For example, it says that someone whose wife is not happy, he's going to have less parnasa. So how do you know? This man maybe gave a $1,000 check to his synagogue, and then he went and he hurt his wife's feelings. So whatever he gave means nothing because of the hurt feelings of his wife. Or somebody who says, yes, I give a lot of charity, but at the same time he doesn't keep Shabbat. So
It doesn't count, right?
So nothing, it doesn't count as anything for the man?
no, it certainly counts, but he cannot say, why don't I get rich? Because you gain over here, but you lose much more over there.
What if you had a difficult wife?
Yes.
Well, if a person is on a job that has stable paychecks, how is he supposed to get rich then?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So
You have to
could
not
give
count
all
your money.
the-
Don't carry your money, right?
No, so that's a different question. Who is rich? Who is rich? Yes, the one who is happy with his lot. So
You know, someone gave tzedakah and they found the exact money they need for their wedding on the floor, $500 in envelope.
Just on the floor.
Just right on the floor in the city.
So, by the way, we know that all the money that a person is supposed to earn is written on Rosh Hashanah
That's it.
until the next Rosh Hashanah. However, it doesn't really mean that the money that you're going to earn, but rather the money that you're going to benefit from. You can earn a lot, but then you can lose a lot. And you can have somebody who earns millions, but then he goes bankrupt. And you can have somebody who earns very little, but he lives happily. So on Rosh Hashanah, it's predetermined how much money you will be able to benefit from. Some people earn a lot, but they put everything into savings, and their entire life they don't use it. They suffer their entire life, and then the money goes to their children. So even though they were millionaires, but it didn't really count. It was only on paper, but in reality they didn't use the money. And same on the other side. A person might be earning only a little bit, but at the same time he's saved from accidents and diseases and pain and worry. And so every cent that he earns, he benefits to the fullest. By the way, it says that one of the Amoraim, one of the great rabbis of the Talmud, his name was Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Reish Lakish, on his deathbed he was crying. And his students asked him, Rabbi, why are you crying? And he said, because I have a bag of onions that I didn't use, and I feel bad, I'm dying, and I worked for them and I didn't get to use it. I wasted my time working. So
French onion soup right away.
So they asked him, but you have a daughter. She's going to use the onions. So he said, she's capable of earning her own onions. Why should I spend my life to get onions for her?
Wow, interesting.
So this is the highest level where you benefit from everything that you earn. And if somebody needs, I'll help them. But if they don't need my help, if they can do it themselves, why should I spend my life for someone who doesn't need my help? And so we have to think about it. Anytime we undertake another project to earn more money, why are we doing it? Is it to get rich? Is it to just be cold rich, just to make people jealous of us? Or is it because we have what to do with the money? Either because our family needs it, or because I have somebody, a worthy cause that I need to help. And if there is no reason for it, then it's a waste of life.
That being said, how do you know where to give the money? Like to yeshiva, to charity? What is the...
Yes, we're gonna speak about it, but I'm gonna leave it for the next class because it's a big topic. We're gonna stop soon. Yes.
So since you said she's able to work for her own onions, right? If you look at most people who need donation, they could also make their own onions
So-
in a sense, you know?
So
So
that's a good question.
Where do you draw the line then?
That's a good question. The general answer is, if somebody is in need and asking you for help, you don't tell them, I don't think you need it.
Oh, yeah.
If she's not asking, she's a working woman, she supports herself and she doesn't need your onions, so then your hour spent earning the money to buy that bag of onions was a waste.
What if they're still going to be appreciated?
What if they don't need it?
You have to consider what is worth more, the appreciation that you gave somebody a bag of onions that they don't really need, or that hour that you can learn more, that you can do other mitzvot, that you can help other people, you can speak to somebody, help them. You could have done that as opposed to giving somebody something they don't really need. And the same goes for our children. When we try to save for their college, when we try to save for their wedding, for their down payment, for their house, are we doing them a favor or are we wasting our life? So that's just a question to think about. And just quickly, another example, what if you get inheritance from your great-grandmother? Do you have to separate Maaser?
It's not
It's a gift, though.
It's a gift.
Yeah,
If you win the lottery, you
separated
still
it,
have
no?
to
Huh?
give. The grandparents already or whoever.
And let's say your great-grandmother already separated 20%, she gave it to charity.
Oh, yes.
If like if someone gives you a money gift, you still have a wedding gift, you have to give away 10%. If it's a gift, it's a gift. No, but it's still your money.
So inheritance of money, monetary inheritance, you have to separate 10%,
Even if it was already separated.
even if it was separate, because it's new income for you.
Wait, so
It
what
could
was
just
the
disappear
with
like
that?
that if you keep giving it away.
You have to
Well,
separate
yeah,
it.
that's
Can you
why
repeat it?
taxes, you know, they.
Huh?
Can you repeat it, what you just said?
Yes, monetary inheritance, you have to separate 10%, even if the person who gave it to you separated Maaser themselves, because for you it's new income. However, if it is non-monetary inheritance, let's say they give you a house, you don't have to separate 10% until you sell it. And that makes sense, because if somebody gave you $1 million house, if we would obligate you to now give $100,000 to charity, you say, I don't have. Where am I going to get it from? So then you would be obligated to sell it. So we don't require you to separate Maaser until you actually decide to sell it.
Sorry. So if you sell your own house, that's not income. That's already your house. You don't have to give.
So in selling your own house, if you invested, let's say, $200,000, and then plus all the mortgage payments and interest and everything, if then you sell it for $1 million, so let's say you make 500,000 at the end, so that's considered income.
Also, if you get $20 from your grandma on your birthday, do you have to?
Yeah.
So that's the next question. What if it's a gift? So there are two kinds of gifts besides non-monetary gifts. Non-monetary gifts, we already said you don't have to separate Maaser until you sell it. But monetary gifts, there are two kinds. One is that your grandmother gives you $20 and say, I see you need a new knapsack, go buy yourself a new knapsack. So then, since she told you what to do with the money, then you're not free to use the money the way you want. That means this money is not really yours. It's as if she's giving you the knapsack, she's just asking you to buy it and she'll pay for it. And therefore, if the money that they give you, they want you to use it for specific purpose, whether to buy yourself something or even to use as a down payment for the house, you don't have to separate Maaser. However, in the future, if you decide to sell that object or sell that house, then that original money you will turn into a monetary gift, and then you will have to separate Maaser. So you have to keep track of that.
To somebody, when they give you a gift, you have to get what they want you to get?
Of course.
What if they're like, I want
Because
to
they're
buy
giving
this
it to you on condition that you can have this money if you do the following with it. You can then ask them, is it okay if I buy something else with it?
Oh.
What if it's
But if they give you money and they say, here, do whatever you want with the money, then it's considered income and you have to separate Maaser.
so like the back to the selling the house, let's say you sell the house, do you have to make do you have to give Maaser on the profit or everything?
On the profit. The Maaser is always on the profit. Yes.
So if the house I'm selling it for 100,000 and I make profit another 500, I only give on the 500.
Yes.
And if my dad gives me $100 and it's like in my bank account, I'm like, okay, fine. So he says, go shopping for the family with that food and then with that money, and then there's like whatever $20 left over. Do I have to give Maaser on that $20?
Yes, because now that extra $20 is your personal money that he gave you. So with houses and other investments, again, you subtract all the business expenses. So for the house, if you have to pay the insurance, if you have to pay for fixing it, maintaining it, and especially the interest on your mortgage, that of course is a business expense. And then at the end of, let's say, 20, 30 years, when you sell the house, you can subtract all the interest payments that you made. And as well as you can also account for the inflation. If now that money is worth less, so then
You less Maaser?
you can give less Maaser.
What if you have a house and then you're selling it to get a bigger house, like your family group, whatever, and you're just taking that money into the bigger house?
Yeah,
Good question, yeah.
you can.
Because like if you're thinking about it like taxes a little bit,
Yeah.
right? With tax
It's
law,
similar.
you have like if you take the money out and you put it into another property, then you have exemption or whatever those fancy words are, and you send it over and you don't have to pay. So what do you do here? Like especially like let's say realistically, you have 3 kids, you realize it's time to get a bigger house, and you can't necessarily pay. However, like you can't like every bit counts.
Yes.
And you want to put it towards the next.
Yeah. So
mortgage.
in ideal world, that would be considered an income. That is a profit, right? So you would have to separate Maaser. And as we said, that taking upon yourself this as a bli neder, whenever you feel I cannot bring myself to give so much money, you always have that to fall back on and to say, you know what, I'll postpone it. When I become rich and I sell that house and I'll have that money, which usually never happens because you always transfer it to the next one and the next investment. But ideally, you should separate Maaser for that. There is more, but I'm going to stop here, and I just want to give you a quick story that is important to keep in mind. There was once a great rabbi in times of Mishnah, and he had a dream on Rosh Hashanah. And in the dream, he he found out that his nephews are going to lose 700 golden dinars in the coming year. So he didn't want his nephews to lose the money. So what did he do? Throughout the next year, he constantly approached them with various causes, poor people, yeshivot, and was trying to extract the money from them. By the end of the year, they donated 670 golden dinars, they were rich family, to charity. And then on the last day of the year, tax collectors from the government came and they confiscated, they showed them the books that they owed them 30 golden dinars, and they took them away. So the nephews came to their uncle and they were sad. They said, the tax collectors took away 30 golden dinars from us. And the uncle said, don't worry, I saw a dream last Rosh Hashanah that you're going to lose 700 golden dinars, and that is why I was trying to take money from you for charity, so that your money goes to charity instead of tax collectors. So they got upset at him and they said, why didn't you tell us your dream? We would have given you the last 30 dinars as well. This way it went to the tax collectors instead of charity. So he said, if I would have told you that, you would lose some of the mitzvah of charity, because you would give it because you knew it's going to be lost anyway. You would give it because you know it's destined for this money to leave you. And it would be easy for you. But this way, since you didn't know that, it was hard for you. You felt like you're giving your own money, and you still committed to give charity, and therefore the mitzvah for you was much greater. So it was worth it for you to lose the 30 golden dinars, but at the same time give the 670 with the right kavana. So we have to realize that everything is predetermined. How much money you earn, how much money you benefit from, and how much money is not yours. But Hashem is just sending to you as a manager of His account to distribute it to those that Hashem wants. And if you do it willingly, happily, good. And if not, then Hashem will have to take over and do the job for you. And then He'll have to take the money from you and give it to others. And that might not be as pleasant. And of course, that will take away the mitzvah from you. It's much better if you do it willingly, happily, and get the mitzvah for it, as opposed to whether it's getting into accident, getting a letter from IRS, or getting a ticket, chas v'shalom. So keep that in mind, that whatever money you spend, you're never going to become poor from it, because whatever money you're supposed to benefit from is going to come to you, and whatever money is not yours, you're not going to be able to touch. So Be'ezat Hashem, we should all have trust in Hashem, and have serenity that whatever my obligations are must be that I have the means and I don't have to worry what's going to be. Hashem gave me whatever I needed until now, and He's going to continue giving me in the future. Shavua Tov.